I'm Jessica Allen, Museum Curator of Hurstville City Museum and Gallery, and with me today is Beric Henderson, artist of our upcoming exhibition Dangerous Dreams, which opens at the museum on Saturday the 6th of February at 5 p.m. Beric has kindly volunteered to give us an insight into his world and the process behind the exhibition. So, Beric, your exhibition is called Dangerous Dreams. What inspired you to create this title?
Well, the title actually it came about from lots of soul searching, I suppose. The works are an amalgam of different shows which I put on over the last 10 years, and they all centre around or inspired by my dreams or subconscious musings, sketches that I've done spontaneously, ideas that I try and jot down at night as quickly as possible so that I can express, these subconscious ideas. And because there's an element of mystery and there's danger, perhaps, I was searching for a title that sort of tried to sum up, the overlapping themes of all the different works. And probably, I think it was actually while watching a Spellbound by Hitchcock recently that where they were talking about the dreams and the dangerous aspects. I think that was one of the things that actually helped inspire me to put the title together. I think it fits. Mm.
And what kind of dangerous dreams can visitors who come to the museum and gallery expect to have revealed to them when they view your artworks?
Oh, well, lots and lots of different types of dangerous dreams. So we have lone figures in the forest trying to flag a lift, and people in the audience will wonder whether this hitchhiker is actually friendly or potentially dangerous. A lot of the scenes are nocturnal, so there's a lot of use of bright light and shadow. But the environments are quite different, so I've tried to create mini worlds within each painting, so there's lots of different scenes. For instance, behind us we have a family just in a suburban home watching a 50s movie, and there's this element of danger in the background. Probably can't see it, but one of the houses has a silhouette in the window, which was actually inspired by Psycho, Hitchcock's movie. So the scenes are set in parks, in a city, in apartments, in carnivals, dark side shows, down alleys, anything where you can imagine having a dangerous dream.
And can you tell us something about your signature piece for the exhibition, Closing Time?
Well, Closing Time was actually done recently, and it was for a show in the city at the Art House Hotel, and I'd spent the last 2 years doing all these different sideshow or carnival inspired paintings, and I wanted to encapsulate all these different elements of the sideshow and the carnival in one sort of scenario. So the idea of Closing Time was actually to have a wide view of a carnival just as it was getting dark, so twilight, I guess, and it's at closing time, so it's mostly empty, but you do see you see people leaving, and you just see different figures scattered throughout the carnival, and they have shadows, and you sort of they're placed or positioned within the carnival so that you sort of wonder what they're doing. Mm. And there's just one single carousel or merry-go-round at the centre which is lit up, and there's a figure next to that. It was actually a lot of fun to paint, and I quite enjoyed it because in the process of painting Closing Time, I would continually paint and repaint figures, just changing where they were, and so it had a bit of a life of its own. So it was good.
And who are the artists that you have drawn on, and how have they inspired you?
Well, over the years, there's been a lot of artists who've influenced me. I think Well, since childhood I was interested a lot in science fiction illustration, so a lot of film concept artists like H.R. Giger, who did the design of the alien in the movie Alien. His use of his airbrush technique with very luminous painting style has had a strong influence on how I regard the use of light. I think in modern times, more recently, there's no singular artist who's had a strong style, although I have a lot of artists who I admire greatly. It's probably more an influence of the cinema and different film directors who've had an influence, such as Hitchcock, Tim Burton, those sort of people, and the mood and atmosphere from those sort of movies has a big influence.
Mm. You mentioned Hitchcock. If you had tea with him, which of your paintings would you choose to show him?
I think I'd be too embarrassed to show any of my paintings to him, actually. I think every artist, whether a writer, painter, film director, simply strive to express themselves in their own way, the best that they can. I think if I met Hitchcock, and it's a purely theoretical situation since he is dead, and in fact the idea of resurrecting him for a meeting for tea would be an interesting painting itself. I'd probably just ask him to look at the show, and I'd be happy to have any feedback that he might give. I think the closest I've come to that sort of meeting would be with film director, a more recent film director, Alex Proyas, who directed Dark City and I, Robot and The Crow, very dark sort of gothic films, and he recruited me to his art gallery in the Surrey Hills a few years ago. It was only open for a year and a half or so, but the first meeting with him was quite inspiring. I had no idea who he was initially. I thought he was one of the tradesmen, and I was talking about all my paintings and how they were inspired by the cinema, and afterwards when I found out who he was, I was quite embarrassed. I'm just hoping that people will come and be inspired, and especially in terms of their imagination.
Mm. I've got one last question for you today. Where are you going from now? What does the future hold for Beric Henderson?
Well, that's a very open-ended question. Obviously, continuing more of the same. Really, what I'd like to do is it's not so much about painting necessarily, but about expressing different ideas, and that's the creative process, which I find really interesting. I'd like to obviously refine my paintings and the content, but it continually evolves. I'd like to branch out and to try more sculpture, and I've also been writing bits and pieces over the years. So one thing I'd love to do would be to write a novel, or at least express some of the ideas that I get onto canvas in a different form. So I think that's where I'm getting.
Wonderful idea. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming to talk to us today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.